it's time to sit back and relax with your favorite drink and listen.
Good evening, my night-bound travelers, and welcome once more to the threshold where comfort thins and the dark presses in close. Tonight I'll be your companion as we step beyond the safe glow of the ordinary and into the places where memory bends, guilt festers, and old wounds learn to breathe. So hush the world outside, settle deep into your chair, and let the quiet take hold. What we're about to explore begins with something familiar. A childhood, a family, a neighborhood that should have been harmless, but somewhere beneath the tidy lawns and polite smiles, something ancient and vindictive was already listening. And when the past finally answers back, it does so with a voice that never leaves. Are you ready to hear what clawed its way out of the shadows in our feature-length story this time? Then follow me, and let the story unfold.
I tried using a Ouija board to find my long-lost brother. Now I know what drove him away. By Malcolm MacDonald. Part 1. I didn't used to be a fuck-up. Well, that's to say, I didn't used to be this fucked up. The downward spiral that is my current lot in life didn't begin until the night my brother Russell disappeared. He was just 8 years old. We were living in Meadowville at the time, a neighborhood in Arcosawin, one of Toronto's bedroom communities. Russell, my folks, and I. The town was nicknamed Cozy by the teachers and over-enthusiastic parents, which fit the boring, yuppie atmosphere of the suburb. But the old-timers and coarse teenagers referred to it by a choicer name. We were living in a nice apartment complex near the town centre shopping area in our neighborhood. Affordable, sure, and not as luxurious as the townhouses and open-concept homes west of Winston Churchill Boulevard, but still good, and far better than the public housing unit we flared from the city. Our dad scraped and crawled to get us out of there, working 2 jobs including graveyard shifts at Burger King. Our mum was a homemaker, but pinched every penny she could, even selling off her prized jewelry, including some heirlooms and gifts from their wedding. Eventually, she even started working part-time hours at the Tim Hortons, then the nursing home off of Erin Mills. And even then, we still had to be careful what we bought. The little wizard action figure Harry Potter knockoffs from Dollarama instead of the real McCoy. Second-hand clothes from Value Village. The clearance rack at Old Navy's if we were lucky. Scratched-up DVDs from the public library instead of Blu-ray discs from Blockbuster or Rogers. My mother's homemade spaghetti and meatballs on Friday nights, instead of ordering a pizza. But it was all right, at least as far as the 4 of us were concerned, in our cozy little world in apartment 804 on McCallion Road. The hardest part was how Russell and I had to learn to turn the other cheek in the face of wealthier suburban kids who treated us like we had the plague. The same kids that threw their parents' money around like it was tap water. See, that's the thing about cozy Arcosawin, or any suburb outside a major city. It's all about keeping up with the Joneses. Kids here don't dream of becoming astronauts or NHL All-Stars. Instead, they aspire to become accountants, maybe engineers. That way their parents have something to brag about whenever they bump into the other hockey mums at the Starting Point shopping centre downtown, so that they themselves can tell people about their part-time or summer job, between flipping burgers or mopping warehouse floors, that they're building to something better. Something in the near future, something attainable, lucrative, practical yet impressive. And the only kids who deign to dream of a future in something so baroque as show business are the dumbass white boys in Lakeshore Park with too much of their parents' money to care about good grades or post-secondary prospects. Speaking of too much money, this brings us to the centerpiece of my little fable. Not my missing brother Russell, mind you, but posh, Meadowville native Ashley Grayson. Ashley was everything I wasn't. Pretty, fashionable, erudite, athletic, well-off and popular. Yeah, she was the it girl in every sense of the word, possessing a confidence instilled by her educated, industrious parents and an intelligence guided by the best tutors money could buy. She was the kind of girl a girl like me ought to despise, But to my own surprise, I worshipped the ground she walked on, and was desperate to win her favour. I never tried to emulate her. My heavy eyeshadow, black lipstick, Doc Martens, and sleeveless denim jacket adorned with Dead Kennedy and Sex Pistol buttons, falling far afield from Ashley's clean and preppy affectations. But I never stopped trying to be accepted by her, with my warts and all. It had been nearly 3 years when I called her to hang out that night, knowing that, like me, Ashley had a yen for the occult, more of a clandestine fixation for the immaculately reputable it girl. Well, I coaxed her into a late-night rendezvous with the promise of playing the Ouija board. At this point in the story, I'd love to tell you that our long separation was owing to Ashley's enrollment at Weston, but that would only be half true. Our tacit falling out began the same week Russell went missing. Oh, I wish I could tell you I remember the day he went missing like it was yesterday, that I recall the exact moment I realized something was wrong, that there were signs that something was bothering him. But, well, that date and time's fuzzy now, smudged under the banal details of life and routine. I simply remember chewing my soggy cereal at the kitchen table, watching Russ grab his backpack and lope toward the door so to take the elevator down to the back lot where the school bus was waiting. When I arrived home that night, having spent the afternoon in band practice, I saw my ever-anxious mother with her face buried in a handful of Kleenex and my father pacing the room with the kitchen phone at his ear, the cord wrapping around his waist like a snake. A police constable later came by the house to talk to us. The cadet took our statements, asked to look around Russell's room, and Russell never ever came home. His disappearance was like the first domino to fall, sending our family tumbling into disarray, winging us back into poverty. My dad, understandably obsessed with finding Russ, lost his job from calling in too many days sick to search for him. It didn't help that when he did show up for work, he was either on 3 hours sleep, tops, or half in the bag, often both. Until this time in our lives, I'd never known my dad to touch anything as strong as beer. My mother stayed in bed for months on end, eventually leaving without word or a trace. We lost the apartment, and Dad and I scrounged up the little we had left and moved back into public housing. Dad was able to keep us in Arcosiwin, out of the shelters, but I still had to enroll in a new school as we'd relocated to a poorer neighborhood in the northeast quarter, and we couldn't afford for me to take the city bus across town every day. By then, it was better that I didn't know anyone. At the old high school, I'd gone from cute goth girl novelty to an outright leper. I'd been branded unlucky, like a black cat crossing your path, everyone afraid misfortune was catching. I carried that blight to my new school, along with accompanying jaded attitude, so nothing changed except the faces in the hallway, some that gawked, others that pointedly looked away. I didn't bother making any friends besides a smattering of kids who hung out at the bottom of Smoker's Hill, especially the ones who could get me alcohol. From grade 11 to this rendezvous, I'd been hitting the bottle, hard. Not on weekends and holidays like most kids. Every day, starting from noon until I passed out at midnight. I didn't imbibe the designer booze for underage drinkers like Goldschlager, Mike's Hard, or Smirnoff Ice. I drank bottom shelf vodka, bottom shelf rye, drinking it straight from the neck until I was numb. I also got high, and again the other losers planted on Smoker's Hill helped with that. When I couldn't get quality weed, I huffed glue. I did what I did to get my head out of that dingy public housing unit, from the black mold festered on the ceiling and floor tiles, from the graffitied stairwells, from the hard cases standing in the hallways like they owned it, like they were Heisenberg in their own private meth den. Anything to chase away Russell's memory, the ghost of the possibility that he might still be out there somewhere. I was still living in that 2-bedroom box with my old man the night Ashley and I met up to play the Ouija board. I was supposed to meet her outside of our old high school at 8. Looking at my watch, a half-spent Mickey of rock gut in my hand, I saw it was just past 6. Knowing I only needed an hour, assuming the buses were on time, I swallowed the liquor, then downed a warm tall boy I glommed from the trunk of my pop's car. Not able to think of a good reason not to, I chased the liquor by inhaling a bag of glue in the stairwell before shipping off into the balmy June night. I floated a foot off the pavement to the bus stop. By the time I'd arrived in front of our school, I'd mostly sobered up. My good mood was a pinch spoiled, though, when I checked my watch, seeing that the bus had arrived late. Never to be outdone, Ashley would arrive fashionably 10 minutes later. Not accustomed to being alone with my thoughts, I dug in my knapsack, past the Ouija board, and fished out a tube of glue and second paper sack. By the time Ashley arrived, I could barely stand or restrain my euphoric giggles. Ashley looked thoroughly unimpressed. I greeted her hastily, eagerly, and she responded with a curt nod, not even meeting my eyes, the lion's share of her attention absorbed by her phone. In the near-complete dark of that humid, hazy night, the glow from her screen the only illumination of her face, I could see she hadn't changed a bit. Still beautiful despite her frown and the scant light. Still slim, obviously not prey to the freshman 15 all the yuppies talk about. "All right, Carla," she drawled, not even attempting to hide her disdain. "What are we doing? I mean, out here so late and all." I shook my head, confused. "I told you, on the phone, man. We're going to play the Ouija board tonight. Like we did back in middle school for sleepovers, remember?" Ashley sighed with exasperation. Clearly she'd soured on the idea on the way over. "You really want to bother with that stupid game?" she said. "You know, it's always just one of us pulling the planchette, having a laugh." I scratched my nose. Having a laugh? She rolled her eyes as if to say, "You wouldn't get it." Probably some expression she'd picked up on campus. Something that soars above the heads of peasant folk like me. Ever since moving to that high school in the Northeast, I dropped what my dad calls those $10 words, and began talking like a stoner, ending every sentence with man or dude, every other word being shit or fuck. No doubt people like Ash mistook this parlance for what truly resided inside my head. I then noticed her scanning me, looking me up and down. "Yeah, are you okay?" she asked, stifling a giggle. "Yeah," I said, sputtering, adjusting my hair and shaking my head. "Yeah, of course, man. What? What do you mean, man? What's wrong?" Another eye roll. She probably figured I was drunk, not flying on solvents and ephedrine. I then discovered myself still giggling, my eyes tearing up from some mysterious inside joke to which even I was not privy. My throat then seized on me for a second, as though in wake of a coming sob. Then I thought, am I going to cry? "So," Ashley exhaled, examining her wristwatch, like there wasn't a clock on her phone. "Where are we doing this little seance? At your apartment?" "Oh, you see, we're having renovations going on right now, dude, so the house isn't any good. Figured it was such a nice night out, we could do it on a park bench, picnic table, even in a clearing in the woods, man. You know, Midnight Society style, hey?" Jesus, why did I feel like I was going to start blubbering at any second? Reticent and woefully underwhelmed, she snapped her wristwatch up her forearm and checked the time again in one fluid motion. "Look," she said, "I'm not sure about all this now, okay? I'm really pressed for time, with assignments, upcoming exams and all. Why don't we just grab something at Timmy's? I gotta get headed back soon." "Headed back?" I bleated. "What? Why, man? You just got here. How long's it been since you've been back in the coos, man? You know, why do you want to go back so soon?" Feeling something wet on my upper lip, I hastened to brush it away. I observed the pearl of moisture undulating along my forefinger, relieved it wasn't blood. Ashley's eyes danced, taking me in. In those eyes I saw myself reflected back, a minstrel stick puppet of a shambolic junkie. Ash had led a charmed, nearly sheltered life, but she was no fool. "You okay, Carla? You sure? You seem distracted." "Yeah," I said, coming down, forcing myself to stick to one-word answers. Adjusting her purse strap, Ashley hummed a single low note. "You look like you've lost weight," she said, softening. searching for something to ease the tension. I tilted my head down and gave a sideways smile. I sure had lost weight. I made it a mission to stay small since grade 8. I wasn't rich, popular, pretty, or book smart. And the least I could do was be thin. In my kamikaze binge-drinking, drug-addled rut, being thin had been my one lonely health goal. Not hard to achieve, being a drug addict living on government assistance. Ashley fished a Marlboro Light out of her purse and put fire to it. Her expression had turned wolfish. "Why is this so important to you?" she asked, holding her smoke between long rectangular fingers, like a model in a magazine ad. "Why don't we just go to a bar or club or something? Get our drink on." Examining the black laces on my jawbreakers, I mumbled, "I wanted to do this last week. On Wednesday, remember?" "Why?" Ashley laughed, sending a blue cumulus my way. "What was so special about last Wednesday?" My jaw trembled, my fake lashes bedewed with tears. She'd forgotten. Perhaps she never knew. Ashley forced out a laugh. "Jeez, Carla, what? What is it?" "That's the anniversary. That's when Russell went missing." No longer smiling, Ashley blew another long blue cloud into the humid night air. Her face was otherwise unaltered, furrowed brow, same frown as before, but she looked suddenly contrite and, for the first time that night, interested. "Yeah, that was 6 years ago, right?" she said. My spirits lifted a hair. "Yeah, that's right, you remembered. Is that why you wanted to use the Ouija board? See if he's still alive? Ask the spirit world for guidance on how to find him if he is. Contact him if he's, well, you know." Still eyeing my leather boots, I shrugged one shoulder. All of the above. I then felt her take me by the wrist, gently leading me down the street. "Come on, dude," she crooned. "Let's do this thing." "Hey," I said in faux protest, wiping away tears. "Where are you taking me?" "Well, you said. It's a nice night. Let's do it out here. In fact, hell, let's do it in the woods." "The woods?" I exclaimed, delighted. Come on," she said, yanking me along. "But the woods?" Still pulling my arm, she spun around, flashing that mischievous, effervescent grin I fell in love with when I first saw her at age 10. "Carla, honey, if you're going to have a midnight seance, you got to do it right." Part 2. The darkened woods were abuzz with life as we approached. Walking over the bridge to the conservation area, the echoing sounds from the creek, coupled with the miry air, made me nostalgic, recalling memories of Russell and me wading into the water, fishing for tadpoles. Ashley and I turned the torches on our phones on and ambled into the fringe of tall grass and reeds, maneuvering around hogweed and Queen Anne's lace. I giggled hearing Ashley's shriek and seeing her brush wildly at her face, the universal gesture of one ensnared by errant gossamer. At the brook, before the clearing, we both tried to bound over, but ended up with our shoes wet and muddied, falling short. We laughed and cursed, not caring about our wet feet, just like when we were kids. At about the middle point in the forest, we found a dry, flat clearing and set up our crude campsite. I took the board out of my backpack and, to my surprise, Ashley produced something of her own from out her purse. It was her planchette. I couldn't quite see it in the dark, but it glistened in the torchlight and was slick and heavy as if made of marble. I'd never seen anything like it before, though I had to admit it looked far better than the plastic heart-shaped planchette with the hole in it that came with the board I'd bought from Walmart. Ashley's was shaped like a weaved basket, or a squamous snake coiling in on itself, but instead of a single hole, it had a crystal bubble for its window in the center. Carved into the serpentine grooves was what I'd first thought to be the outline of a star. Much later I would Google the shape, discovering the pattern to be that of a septagram. "Hey, You got anything of Russell's on you?" Ashley whispered. I could barely see her in the dark, let alone hear her over the chirping crickets. Yeah, I do," I said, surprising myself on remembering. I pulled my leather wallet out of the back pocket of my sausage-sleeve jeans and produced Russell's favorite commemorative stamp, 5-cent Mackenzie Bowell. I'd carried it everywhere since he'd vanished, perhaps in hopes that I could give it to him or use it to somehow entice him back home. Again, I couldn't read her expression, but detected a note of demurral in Ashley's thoughtful hum. "Well, that'll probably work, but... do you have anything of him?" Mystified, I cocked my head back and said nothing. "Of him?" "Well, I meant something of his physical self," she elaborated, either reading my silence or my thoughts. I then felt 2 slender digits remove the stamp from my thumb and index finger. I could just make out her placing the item on top of the squamous planchet, beside the crystal window. Something bodily, like hair or toenails. It was around this time that I started coming down from the glue fumes, which wouldn't be too much of a problem, other than putting me on edge, but my stomach had started to churn. When Ashley said the word bodily, I felt the ramen noodles I'd scarfed for lunch begin a steady campaign up my throat. I don't have anything like that," I said, after swallowing the brackish bile. "Why would I carry my brother's toenails?" In the forest gloom, I could just make out Ashley's wagging head. It's fine," she said. No promises, but if we go to my apartment." "No, it's fine. This'll work. Let's just play." "Okay," I sighed, relieved she shot down the offer to go to my apartment, me having proffered it just so she wouldn't suggest it. Then I thought of something. "Hey, wait a tick. I know." Ashley started from my sudden yelp and subsequent giggling. I was still a bit toasted after all, not fully in control of the volume of my voice. "Hey, use this." I presented her with a strand of my own hair. Her eyes flashed, almost aglow in the dappling moonlight through the foliage. "It has to be something of his," she said reticently. "So, he's my brother, with the same blood, right? This should work." Science, like all other subjects, wasn't my forte, far from it. But what we were doing that night wasn't exactly scientific. It was with palpable trepidation that Ashley acquiesced in my suggestion and took the proffered strand, placing it beside the stamp on top of the planchet. We then began the ritual. "Is there a presence here?" Ashley said, her voice a slow, somniferous purr. I felt the planchet begin to drift to my left, Ashley and I facing each other, our fingertips pressed to the stamp and hair to keep them in place. The smooth, artery-shaped rock landed on yes. Beneath the bulbous crystal window, the letters appeared distorted and squiggly along the edges. My heart hammered in my chest, my stomach flipped, and my scalp suddenly grew moist. I didn't want to do this anymore, but I didn't have the gumption to tell Ashley to stop. The planchet eased its way back to the center of the board. "I don't know anymore, Ash," I said, having worked up the nerve. Ashley said nothing. "I'm saying, I don't like this, man. I think..." "Shh," Ashley hissed. The planchet started moving again. My brow was beaded with sweat. We hadn't asked it anything. It slid its way past the letters and over to the numbers. It stopped on the following digits for 1 second each. 6, 2, 2, 2, 0, 1, 6, before retreating to the middle. I furrowed my brow, repeating the sequence in my head, racking my brain for its meaning. I tried crunching the numbers, adding them up, rearranging them, but perhaps that was just me subconsciously denying what was clearly there. I wasn't good at math, but I didn't need Stephen Hawkins' noodle to decode it, especially after seeing how ashen Ashley's face had gone. 6, 22, 2016, I proclaimed. June 22nd, the year 2016, the day my brother went missing. I was almost laughing. I was even elated. This was actually working. Ashley then withdrew her hands from the planchette. You're probably right. Let's stop. No, I insisted, my crapulent symptoms subsiding beside the surge of adrenaline. Let's keep going. Carla, please. You know my brother, Russell, I blurted, ecstatic. Blanchett swung back over to yes. Is he alive? Carla. With the complete lack of sympathetic hesitation you'd see in humans, that bedside manner they talk about in hospital dramas, the planchette swung over to no. First, I felt nothing, just a cold, tingly sensation spreading from my collarbone around to my nape, and the sudden tinnitus ringing in my left ear. Both the tinnitus and the tingling vanished when I met eyes with Ashley. Her look, delicate remorse, of a tacit, anguished apology just bifurcated me, stripped me right to the bone. An alien wail tore itself free from my sweat-beaded lips, and my hands flew up to my face as though they belonged to someone else. The feeling of Ashley's hand on my shoulder only elicited more sobs that I couldn't control. My cries died down, but only from the mucus choking me up. I'd grown so oblivious to everything in my life, I was unaware of the raw hurt that lay dormant within me. It now came bansheeing out with a piercing vengeance. Then I could sense something had changed in Ashley. Her hand stiffened on my shoulder and, well, it's hard to explain, but her touch grew distant somehow, icy. Before I knew that anything was wrong, she was standing over me, yanking at my sleeve, wrenching me to my feet. We have to go now, she whispered sibilantly. Her breath panted somehow. Now. We need to go now. Befuddled, my face damp to the chin, I staggered vertical, but dragged my feet along the pine chips and dirt as Ash shoved me toward the forest fringe from where we'd entered. Go, she hissed. But what about the board? I asked, stumbling behind. Forget the board, she insisted, the two of us now sprinting for the pathway out to the road. The snap of a branch close by whirled me around. All I found was darkness, nothing else. The snapping branch, I'm sure, was just an echo from our retreat. There was nothing. No one else in that forest but us and the skeeters. Whatever Ash saw, or thought she saw, wasn't for my eyes. We flew through the foliage, our clothes snagging on creeping thistle while reeds and branches smacked us in the face. I could just see the glow of a streetlight in the open road before I plummeted into the sudden dip in the ground. I fell splashing into the brook, which fronted the forest like a moat, soaking my clothes in the 2 inches of water, my forearm smacking hard against the 6-inch-high concrete wall. Despite my compromised state, I could feel Ash scrambling to her feet, pulling me along, resuming our flight from the unnamed danger. Ow! Ash, please! I curled my injured arm under my shoulder like a wing. Come on, she urged, her face now visible in the weak amber light. Almost there. Finally, we spilled out onto the pavement road, Ash turning to face the darkened forest from which we'd come. Me just as baffled as when we'd started running. I fell on my butt on the asphalt, nursing my throbbing arm, hot tears striping my cheeks once again. Then I witnessed Ashley Grayson do something I would never forget. With great haste, she produced a long, slim, small object from her purse, wrapped in brown butcher paper. She peeled away the wrapping, revealing a sprig purple flower on a thorny green stem. Around the milk thistle, I saw a stem of yew circling it just shy of the flower. Ash pricked her thumb on one of the thorns and then held the wound over the blossom, turning it a reddish mauve. My sight of her was then blurred as I reflexively screwed up my eyes and held my hand over my mouth, discovering a putrid odor had invaded my nostrils. It was fetid, metallic and acrid, like a murder scene in a freshly painted room. Pinching my nostrils closed, I looked back at Ash and realized she was breathing with her mouth open. Whatever I was smelling had been there all along. Ash had smelled it first. Whether her faster olfactory perception was because of a keen supernatural insight, or due to my own senses being muddled by the glue, I'll never know. I then squinted and looked in the same direction as Ash, making out movement beyond the trees, black shapes shifting over black canvas. Thinking the glue and crank had finally driven me bats, I began sweating and panting when I heard an alien voice begin whispering inside my head. It wasn't much of a relief when I looked up to discover it was actually coming from Ash, chanting something into the bloodied milk thistle in her fist. She was standing there, facing the footpath leading into the forest beyond the creek, eyes closed, muttering in this unknown language as though in fervent prayer. I'd hallucinated before while tripping, but never had I experienced anything this frightening, or anything that felt this real. My eyes darted back to the forest, to the spot where I thought I'd spied movement, realizing that what I'd seen hadn't been movement at all. A tall, likely 10-foot figure had materialized from the darkness, standing just visible in the street and moonlight. I recoiled, then pitched forward, forcing bile back down my burning esophagus. It was a truly hideous, grotesque figure, standing just 30 feet from us, barely obscured by the shadow and vegetation. The thing looked like the anatomical model in a science classroom if it had been designed by a sadist. All the organs, tissue, and bones were visible, the creature degloved, and although it stood perfectly still, I could see the blood pulsate through every vein and orifice, glistening beyond the dark. It stood on bowed legs that bent at unnatural angles. Most bizarre was on the right side of the degloved torso, where an arm should have been, was the neck and head of a horse, likewise skinned. Thank God I wasn't close enough to see the eyes or the teeth of either head, though my inebriated brain drove me mad by filling in the blanks. Despite my debilitating terror, I wondered after a few eternal seconds why the giant was just standing there, not advancing toward us. I then looked back at Ashley, still feverishly praying in tongues, and then put two and two together. The degloved giant was being restrained. She was the one keeping it at bay, like Gandalf in the Lord of the Rings movies. She wasn't praying at all, but casting an incantation, some sort of black magic. Before the realization of what was going on drove me completely insane, the thing began to fade back into darkness. It was like water down a drain, or like switching the channel on TV. One moment it was there, the next gone, as if it had never been. I looked at Ashley and saw how pale she was. Whatever she'd done had left her drained, a husk. Well, I hadn't been hallucinating. Whatever that giant anatomical model was, it had been cast out of the light by her bizarre murmuring. She had saved us both, or so I thought. My arm felt swollen, but not as painful, so I stood. The two of us leaned on each other like boxers at the end of the 9th round, then hobbled our way through the brook trail to the bridge leading us out of the park. We limped our way to the nearest bus stop without speaking a word. Part 3. As we waited on the bench, I thought about offering to run over to one of the nearby convenience stores to buy Ashley something to drink, but the shooting pain in my swollen arm put my teeth on edge. The thought of going anywhere that night without her by my side petrified me, so we just sat there in silence. After 15 minutes, Ashley started talking. It wasn't supposed to be like this. It wasn't supposed to be like this. It wasn't supposed to be like this. She kept muttering that to herself over and over again, almost like the bizarre chant in the park. I didn't know what to say, and the truth was she was scaring me. Ash, go easy, man, I said, the words foreign to my own ears. I felt cumbersome like an 8-year-old walking across the carpet in her mother's stilettos. Ash, you're still in shock. Just chill out. I'm not in shock. I'm not. Listen. You have to listen to me now, okay? What I did back there won't hold that thing off for long. I'm lucky I picked up the smell before it got close enough to trap us in those woods. There's no outrunning that thing. In about 3 to 5 hours, it'll be loose and it'll come for you. Me? I cried, my eyes slit. My head now ached as I grew uncomfortably sober. Just listen to me, Carla, she said, deliberating. Desperate to achieve my undivided attention, she'd already bandaged up her lacerated thumb with a handkerchief and was applying pressure. There wasn't much bloodshed, and I knew the little she'd lost had nothing to do with her current weakened state. Ashley resumed. You have to cleanse your house before it reaches you there. I'll show you how. Hold on a sec, I interrupted. This was all too much. It? Before it reaches my house? You mean that enormous anatomy model in the forest back there? Yes, she said, her eyes incandescent in the night, giving me the 1,000-yard stare. I mean that thing that chased us out like Lisgar Meadow Brook. Its name is Leantour. Leantour, I said, feeling the word in my mouth, its very utterance putrid on my tongue. I then bit my bottom lip, the gears grinding inside my skull. How do you know so much about all this? What was with that flower thing and Christmas tree twig back there? All that chanting and stuff. All that gibberishy stuff. I mean, what? Ashley's bombastic sigh startled me, shutting me up. I could see her eyes shine with tears. Her mascara smudged. Her makeup now was darkly shambolic as my own. She then muttered her own despairing refrain. It wasn't supposed to be like this. Stop saying that. It's as if... I stopped myself mid-sentence. Another possible connection clicked inside my brain. Why did this thing appear while playing the Ouija board? No answer from Ashley. Why did it appear after I asked about Russell? Again, no answer. What does this thing, Leantour, what does it have to do with Russell? Not meeting my gaze, Ash's head quivered from side to side as if she'd abruptly developed Parkinson's. It wasn't supposed to be like this. I finished for her, glowering at the side of her head. It has nothing to do with Russell, she said, her head still wobbling. She was a bad actor. Don't bullshit me, man. Tell me right now, what the fuck does that thing have to do with my brother? Look, Carla, she pleaded, gesticulating wildly with her good hand, desperate to change the subject. You need to listen to me. The Leantour is never going to go away now. You must... Tell me what that thing has to do with my brother right now, Ash. Clearly licked, Ashley gave another, quieter sigh, before closing her mouth, her pink lips forming into a battered pair of rose petals before nodding her head. Reticent but resigned, she said, All right, I'll tell you. She then told me how, 6 years ago, her mother had ordered her to go into my daddy's bathroom the next time I had her over to the house and take something of his, something physical, a strand of hair, a nail clipping, anything of his physical essence. Her mother told her to do this 5 or 6 times, and each time Ashley was over, she forgot. The truth was she was both scared of being caught and creeped out by her mother's request. Her mother, confronting her about her repeated failure of this errand, told her she needed to do this because my father was a bad man and needed to be banished from the city. She assured Ash that neither Russell or I would be affected by what she'd planned on doing. Now the 15-year-old Ashley Grayson felt invigorated, willing to complete her mother's task. But there was just one problem. She knew how much I loved my father. I'd always been a daddy's girl. My mother was always so fussy and prudish, always trying to put me in dresses and pink since I was an infant, whereas my father always treated me like a first son, which is what I wanted. In her own way, Ash loved my dad too. Russell McCullough Sr. might have been a brash, bawdy, and more like your tipsy uncle at Thanksgiving than an ideal patriarch, but he was a good man, always volunteering to help for school trips when he could get time off work, always telling light-hearted jokes, taking all possible slights at his expense in jovial stride. While he might have been the butt of a few light-hearted jabs, and more than a little uninformed on social issues of the day, everyone, with the exception of Ashley's mother, apparently loved him. That was Russell Sr. Russell Jr., on the other hand, at least as far as Ashley Grayson was concerned, well, he was a different story. Ash could still recall the time Russell, my parents and I were invited over to the Graysons for a barbecue, celebrating her dad Landon's promotion to vice president of the bank. As the night drew darker, most of us were outside in the backyard, parents on the patio sipping wine and chatting in the light of the tiki torches, kids splashing around in the pool, playing Marco Polo. That was except for my brother Russell and this little punk who lived down the hall from us, this snot-nosed little know-it-all named Tanner Kipling. The two of them decided to hang out back inside the house, with all the lights turned off, having excused themselves to go to the bathroom. They decided to steal up the stairs and sneak their way into Ashley's bedroom. Presumably the allure of the taboo of a girl's bedroom was too enticing for them to resist. While in there, they had quite the time, popping the heads off her Barbie dolls, jumping on top of her bed, tearing through her diary, scattering her underwear and training bras across the carpet floor, no doubt laughing and giggling like they had front row seats at Yuck Yucks. I'd never heard about this, not even a passing reference to it. The only reason she caught the little bastards was that she saw movement from her window and rushed out of the pool, dripping wet. Apparently it was my turn to be Marco, and I'd had my chlorine-soaked eyes closed. When she tore into her room and found them, they giggled and beat a hasty retreat, leaving her room in tatters, never offering even a token apology. Well, she felt just so humiliated, so violated. Remembering this incident, understanding her mother meant to cast a hex on our family, Ash opted instead to glom a tuft of hair from Russell Jr.'s comb the next time she was over at our apartment. And that, according to her, was how my brother vanished. How he was eventually spirited away by that walking obscenity, by the Liantois. But I don't understand, I interjected. If all this is true, then why did you agree to do the seance with me tonight? Especially after I told you I wanted to try and contact my brother. No answer to that. Just a 1,000-yard stare. Likely she didn't know either. I moved on to the more pressing question. Why did your mother do that? Any of that? Why put a hex on my dad, or anybody? Come on, Carla, she muttered, addressing her lap. You know. No, I don't, Ash. What the heck did my father ever do to her? It wasn't him. It was you, all of you. I tossed my head in disbelief. What? Because you're trash. I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry. You are. You're also common. You're from the sticks or the ghetto or wherever you moved from, driving property value down, filling up the cul-de-sacs and streets with your cousin's station wagons and pickup trucks every weekend, having keggers, keeping the neighbors up, polluting the air with rye whiskey and backyard-grown cannabis. I mean, I didn't understand it when my mother told me. I was just a kid, how could I? But I get it now. My father was a banker, a man on the rise from a good family with a wife and 3 kids. He graduated with distinction from Western. My mother went to Brown for economics. She worked as a college professor before she had me. So how is it fair that your dad, some beer-swilling hoser from Ancaster, who works at McDonald's, can afford to live in the same neighborhood, can send his kids to the same schools? How's that equitable? Ashley's injurious speech struck me like a cold slap in the face. An angry heat crept up my nape. I glowered hard at her, my fingernails digging into the blue plastic beneath my legs. I wanted to tell her she didn't know what she was talking about. That my daddy worked 2 jobs to get us that apartment. That Russell, my mother, and I weren't trash. My dad had worked at Burger King, not McDonald's. But then I thought about the bags I'd huffed before meeting her. Not to mention the booze and crank I'd stashed away at home. Suddenly all the distinctions that I felt elevated my family above the dealers in the stairwell in the old public housing tower seemed as minuscule and dismissible as the difference between a Big Mac and a Whopper. Well, that's pretty big talk for a witch, I settled on as a retort. Ash clucked her tongue. There are people like you everywhere in our cozy win, she elaborated. Folks hiding their income, understating their assets so they can move into public housing and acquire government benefits they're not entitled to have. I sunk my chin into my chest. None of that had been true when they put that hex on us 6 years ago, but I knew all of that was true about me and my father now. I thought the problem was that we didn't have enough money, Ash, not that we pretended to be poor. Another toss of her hair, another cluck of the tongue. Like I was a gnat she couldn't quite swat away. My anger waxed white hot. Fuck you, you bitch. So your mother wanted my daddy dead? For the Leantois to kill him? No, not exactly, no. The Leantois doesn't kill per se. It's just a very persistent pursuer. Doesn't always bring death, but despair. In the old days, it used to bring pestilence and ruined farmers' crops. Your dad was only chosen by my mother because he was the head of the household. If he got chased off, it stood to reason that the rest of you would follow. I let that pass for a moment, and asked her why the 2 of us had run out of Lisgar Meadow Brooks, and why she needed that incantation if this thing is so easily evaded. She told me she didn't know what it would do, having been summoned by the Ouija Board. Also, there was no telling which of us it would attach itself to. Regardless, she and I were pretty certain it wouldn't attach itself to her. I now suspect that incantation wasn't to drive the creature back, but rather to protect herself, rather than the both of us. The bus arrived and we both got on. Ash explained the protective spells through furtive whispers in my ear as we rode through the city. After she'd gotten off at her stop, leaving me on the airy, rumbling bus, I kept ruminating on that one question. Why had Ashley agreed to the séance tonight? She must have known there was a chance we would summon that being from the other world, or wherever, especially with that special planchette she'd used. If she and her mother dabbled in the dark arts, why wouldn't she be especially careful not to antagonize the spirits? Did she do it because she knew, if worse comes to worse, that she could protect herself? That this might be an opportunity to place a second hex on my head, driving me permanently out of her life. Maybe it had been so long since she dabbled, she was just overexcited and lost her head. Or maybe she felt guilt over Russell's disappearance and wanted to genuinely help me track him down. Perhaps all of the above. Perhaps none of the above, but something in between. None of these answers are ones Ash would own up to, and it hardly mattered now. By the time I arrived home, it was 2 a.m. My father had made his way from the broken, beer-sodden lazy boy to the floor, a fresh puddle of regurgitated Molson and Chef Boyardee sloshing mere centimeters beside his head. Well, I'd memorized the ritual, the defensive spell that Ashley had taught me. Whenever I felt the presence close by, clutch a spring of holly close to my chest and clear my thoughts of all fears and mortal wants. She gave me a few sprigs of the stuff and advised that I plant some around our property. She also suggested I try using ivy to ward off drunkenness in the home. Not sure if that'll ever take here. Sleep an impossibility. I stayed up long enough until I picked up that horrid stench. The thing never appeared. Perhaps it couldn't enter here. The smell announced its presence all the same. I was now certain Ash wasn't telling me everything. Perhaps she never had. I felt lonely then, lonelier than ever, reflecting on how I didn't know my oldest friend as well as I thought I had. Despite the smell, I didn't bother performing any of the defensive spells. Instead, I stood from where I'd been sitting, cross-legged on the floor, and strode into my bedroom, sensing something tailing close behind, but neither hearing or seeing anything. From underneath my mattress, I produced a half-spent yellow tube of adhesive, squirted a line inside a brown paper lunch bag, and inhaled until the base of my skull began to hum. Once I was done inhaling fumes, I stole the last of my daddy's whiskey from the Magnum bottle below the sink, choked down the burning liquid until the walls started to move. My stomach flipped, seeing the Liantois, the horrific skinned creature with the horse head instead of an arm, standing in the apartment foyer, hunched for the low ceiling. I didn't hear it come in. I didn't see it before. I had no prior indication other than the fetid, maddening odor. Poor Russ, I thought. That thing must have absolutely terrified him. My mind then tortured itself with all the scenarios of how he might have died, how that could have happened without his body ever being found. I pacified those thoughts with another pull of the whiskey. I realized then that it wasn't meant to kill me. It wouldn't do a thing to me. It would just always be there, in some form following me, razzing me with its hideous appearance, bringing misfortune, that I'd never get used to looking at it, that I'd never be happy ever again. And so, I commenced to drinking until I was numb and the walls danced around me, drinking until I was sick. Alcohol was the only thing to make the creature, its appearance, its smell, its presence anywhere near tolerable. I'd need to do this every day, every night, getting high and drunk, chasing the Liantois away with ethanol and ephedrine, till I was numb, bordering on nauseous, till I'd rendered myself unconscious. But that was no different from before. Now at least my despair was in front of me instead of being invisible and all-encompassing. Now I had a source, a target for my plight. Finally had someone to blame. Ashley Grayson, the one who'd left me behind to be devoured. I wasn't going to plot out my revenge, nor was I going to extirpate this demon from my life. I had someone to blame for my misery, and that was enough.
Well, it's a subject I like to return to every so often. I just find it really fascinating. Have I ever used a Ouija board? I'm trying to think. No, to be honest, and I've had absolutely no interest in doing so, but I am aware of people, friends, acquaintances, and who have, and whether it was real or not, they've had some very, very strange experiences, so it's something that I've never wanted to do, but I'm aware of people who have, and I don't know, don't believe in any of it, but at the same time, I don't want to even try it. It makes sense. Back in England, it's freezing cold. Nights roll in. About 4 o'clock, it starts getting dark. So winter is well and truly, well, it should be. It's the middle of December. Anyway, so thanks for listening as always. And I might be back tomorrow. I'm not quite sure. My schedule's a bit messed up because I'm on holiday. And anyway, don't know. But thank you as ever for listening. Thoughts, feelings, anything else you want to add in the comment section below the video. And as ever, I will do my best to join in the conversation. But until next time, my dear friends, remember, it's just a story, and you all sleep well, yeah?
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this story today. Really means a lot to me and to the author of the story, of course. Well, if you want to know more about me, I'm pretty much everywhere on social media. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can download my music on SoundCloud. I've got a Patreon if you feel like. Throw me $1 or $2. Very much appreciated. And of course, on Reddit, I have a place where you can leave stories if you want me to read one that you've written. Well, hoping to see you all again very soon. Till then, sweet dreams. Bye-bye.